planned as well as you would want. We understand what natural innovations mean, i.e., all living and non-living things occurring naturally, and the interaction of the living species. The climate, yes, climate change, the natural resources, food, water, are some of the things that impact on our survival and economic activity. So when we talk about sustainability, we need to bring our actors to bear. How are we thinking about air quality, the temperature changes, humidity, safety, accessibility, especially in an era where we begin to see people living longer, the aged community. I had the pleasure of going to a number of countries as part of my research, and I was invited to come and see lots of new developments. And I went to a country in Africa, and they were very, very proud to show me public housing. And for every building I went to, I saw stairs very, very high. And I asked the question, does your building code not allow for disabled and aged community? And they gave me a very, very short answer. We haven't even finished dealing with the abled. You're talking about the disabled. So this is the kind of world we live in. So when we're talking about sustainability, we need to look at the fairness, and we need to look at how people are moving. To be able to make an impact on sustainability, we need to get the denomination slightly higher. There is something called climate change, and indeed we are feeling it. The world is changing. For the first time, we're seeing cities that have 50 million people, a city. And it's projected that in the next 30 years, you'll see cities with 75 million people. Just imagine the impact of those on things like good quality air. Of course, there are technologies, smart technologies, helping us in addressing some of those issues. Technological advancements are there. Drones are being used in the built environment. GIS, building information modeling, Internet of Things, big data analytics, all coming in. But how are we exploiting these to help humankind across the many parts of the world in support of us living comfortably in our societies? It is staggering to learn that in the next 20 to 30 years, 50% of all new construction will take place in China and India. If there is a time to begin to address sustainability in a meaningful way, perhaps attention on those two countries may be in order. You go to places, the population of the world is around 7 billion. There are places you'll go and you wonder whether the population should grow anymore. Are you with me? It's really, really staggering. And of course, humans are everywhere, even in the deserts. There are issues we need to contend. And not too long ago, in 2013, the president of China was talking about his vision about the Silk Road economic belt, the so-called One Belt, One Road, Belt and Road Initiative, indicating that that project, as part of connectivity with Asia, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, West Asia, will impact on 4.4 billion people. When you think about the population of the world is about 7 billion, this will impact on 63% of global population. And the project will run till 2029. An opportunity to begin to make a difference. 70 countries likely to be involved. Look at the kind of money we're talking about, 21 trillion US dollars. This is huge. And yes, the impact of humans impacting on rising temperature and carbon dioxide emission. And of course, there's no sector that contributes more than the built environment, than the construction sector. So we have a role to play. And yes, some of these issues come about as a result of our intervention. So temperature increases cannot be explained by just natural processes. Look at some of the big developments going on. And this impact on our health. Climate change impacts on our health in many, many different ways. Irregular weather, heat waves, extreme temperature, precipitation, of course, affects on illness and death. And I could just go a little bit and tell you some of the statistics that are shocking in a minute. But sustainability is not just a word. We have and feel it, especially in many, many other countries. Water quality and quantity. There are people who do not have clean water. I was not too long ago in Nigeria. Even some of the big cities in Nigeria, you cannot guarantee that you turn the water and you have clean water. Food security, it's an issue. The one that really, really makes me want to really go out and begin to make a difference is the control of infectious diseases as a result of climate change, the warm climate. And of course, protection from disasters are some. In many countries, especially in Africa and Asia, undernutrition, because of climate-sensitive changes, kill 3.5 million every year. Diarrhea kills 2.2 million. Unclean water, poor sanitation. Yes, malaria kills almost 1 million every year. It's frightening. Extreme weather events, 60,000 every year. Last 4 months, the television was full of hurricanes in Americas, hurricane in the Caribbean islands, in Bangladesh, things happening in India. These are having impacts. And doesn't it really, really push you when you watch the telly and you see the gravity of nature come to human, and we feel so infinitesimally small? Are you with me? You see the hurricane, you see tsunami, and our jaws drop and say, wow, we can't do much. Perhaps there are things we can do through individual responsibilities and accountabilities to begin to address some of these issues. Diarrhea is related to temperature, and of course in Lima, in Peru, the diarrhea increased 8% for every 1 degree temperature rise, affecting our health. But of course, health impacts don't happen evenly across the world. Look at Indonesia. Look at India. Look at some parts of Africa. Just imagine if you have a flood in situations like this, what the impact will be. Increase and rises in temperature, what this might look like. Yes, we talk of smart technologies. They can do certain things in certain parts of the world, but we need to look at how to raise the denomination. We talk about smart cities. Look at some parts of Africa. Look at some parts of buildings, and you begin to see that there are issues around needs, intra and intergenerational needs, that I think we need to be working on. It's a wicked problem. And what do I mean by wicked problems? Reitel and Weber, in their paper in 1973, tell us that wicked problems are difficult to clearly define. They have many interdependencies and their multi-causality is there. They lead to unforeseen consequences, often unstable, have no clear solutions, socially complex, involve changing behavior, characterized by chronic policy failure. That's exactly what sustainability is. It is messy, it is sticky. And I do perhaps challenge us as academics that when we're looking at sustainability, we need to look at it from a very complex perspective. But every little helps. If we're able to identify and take actions and try to be impactful in the research we do, and yes, if we're able to take individual responsibilities within our own sphere of influence, that will be a good start. And now is a good time to start. If you look at some of the comments that came from Margaret Chan a number of years ago, saying sustainable urban transport could cut heart disease and stroke by up to 20%. Improved stoves for cooking in places like India could save 2 million lives over 10 years. And yes, there are benefits from reduction of greenhouse, which many countries are beginning to work towards, the greening of construction. I think it's important. And yes, the built environment, the professions have a role to play. And I'm glad to see Chris Blight here, because I know the CIOB has commissioned work on sustainability to look into using massive open learning courses to see how they can bring sustainability to the reach of so many people. But our planners have a role in how they plan, how they look at our neighborhoods, our housing designs. And what I do ask, as they do that, they also should take public health into account, which many of them don't at the moment. We know that design, improved design, affects educational achievement. The way schools are designed, the ambience of the school improves productivity of the students. And I have seen firsthand the way hospitals are designed, the location of lifts in hospital have a way of improving recovery in the built environment. Smart technologies are playing a key role in what we do. This morning we heard very briefly about things like 3D printing, Internet of Things, robotics, augmented reality, big data analytics. And we know in Amsterdam, we see how printing a bridge has brought to reality a bridge actually constructed through 3D printing. We see how drones are used in construction sites, in Crossrail in the United Kingdom. It's been used. We also know in California how drones are used to improve productivity. Buildings are changing. We can now build 57-story tower buildings in 19 days. This is fascinating. So your future construction is here. Technological innovations cannot do. So my argument is that we need to look at innovations that bring people together, especially the user-centric capital and the emotional issues. We need to look at innovations that consider and empower individuals, innovations that look at good governance, equity, justice, regulations and legislations. I think it's important. So I want to end my talk to say we need innovative and flexible approaches. We need to work across boundaries. We need to stimulate a debate around responsibility and accountability. Because it's a messy and very sticky issue, contradictory approaches should be tried out. Authoritative, competitive, collaborative strategies need to be tried out because some of these will work in places. It should be integrated. Yes, the notion of long-term as opposed to short-term gains. The issue of leadership. The issue of professionalism, ethics, and performance. And I have to say governance, policy, and planning. And also the notion of having checks and balances are some of the things we need to work on. It is a complex area, and my challenge to all of us is that when we treat sustainability as a domain for study, we need to look at it from a very, very complex perspective. Innovation plays a role, technological innovation plays a role, but on its own, it just is a starter. We need to look at very, very bold innovations in process innovations, innovations in governance, innovations in new markets as a means of reaching those in different parts of the world. It is about wicked problems. We have a role as individuals, and of course, education has an important role to improve our awareness and to inform many in many parts of the world. Thank you so much.
I was very fortunate to have two fantastic speakers who spoke for just 25 minutes each, which is really brilliant. So you have a few minutes for questions. When you were talking about 75 million cities and 4.4 billion people, I said, thanks God I live in Bahrain. 1.4 million, we all know each other in the supermarket. We meet, good morning, how is it going? How's the university? 75 million and 4.4 billion, and God help us. Please, please, Dr.
Thank you very much, Professor Charles, for a very wonderful and insightful delivery. My question is this. You painted a very gory picture about sustainable future, actually opening our eyes to some of the things that are either not known to us. Now, the concept is quite omnibus, like you painted. It ranges from, good health, good climate, and the likes. And the question is, without sounding pessimistic, remember that there are some of these variables that are not controllable by man. They are natural. Now the question is, can we have a sustainable future? Thank you.
Indeed, that's a $64 million question. Yeah. The question then becomes, what is sustainable to you could differ from cultures to culture, and could differ in terms of timeline. I painted a picture of my teenage boy looking at a narrow part of what he needs, i.e. an iPhone that allows him to communicate. That's his needs. He's part of a generation. Look at other parts of the world. Perhaps a sustainable future for them will be an ability to grow cash crops for the next year and for the next 5 years, an ability to have fresh water for the next 5 years. And that's why one has to take what I call an ontological constructive overview, to look at your world, to look at the actors and players. We can approach some aspects of sustainable futures depending on our definition and our claim of needs, wants, and expectations. But it will be difficult to have what I call a homogeneous and a universal sustainable futures for all at one time in one place.
Okay, one last question.
Yeah.
Because we have 3 parallel sessions after this presentation. Last opportunity, please. First one, unfortunately. So there was another one behind you. Please, if you take the 3 questions in one go.
Okay.
And because I don't want to run late.
Thank you very much for your comprehensive presentation. We all agree about everything you have already said. And it seems that in urban planning, we try to invent our self-sustainability. It is not a new idea. It is old as a human being exists on this earth. The question, since we have this broad knowledge, our knowledge has developed with time since the 80s, where sustainability has been promoted and preached as a solution. We find nowadays that resiliency, it start to appear as a competitive, to sustainability. Since we know what is the solution, what are the problem, why we are having this bad condition all over the world? Theoretically, it is very nice, everything you have already said. Can you identify what are the hinders, which is, stop sustainability implementation?
Okay. Can we take, please, we have a question on our
my question is going back to what you mentioned at the beginning about risk and also about the need for good governance and good leadership. We're talking about collaborative strategies to address a multi-strand problem, and with the increasing development internationally of inward-looking policies, inward-looking politics, protectionism. I think that's a real challenge for the academic world in the sustainability field, and I'd like to know your views on that.
Yes, thank you, Professor Charles.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Yes, we are now
in your presentation.
Sorry. Yes. We are now planning to start a research project this academic year with the London South Bank, working on the sustainable futures for construction industry with utilization of waste products in construction and building. I've started this project myself 35 years back when I was doing my PhD at Leeds University, of using fly ash as a replacement of cement, and I worked since in that area. Now we are working to start this academic year on this kind of project. We're using different kind of waste material in construction, which we have, I think this is a step forward for both universities to work together into a very constructive, concrete research work projects that this kind of project is required in this kind of this environment. Thank you very much, Charles, for the
Last question, please.
Thank you very much, sir. Well, in your presentation, sir, you did mention that technological innovations is part of the solutions to the problem of sustainable future. My question is that is this technology, are they not part of the problem itself? Is it not true that every step that man takes forward towards technological innovation is actually a step taken towards early grief? Those things we carry around, the iPhone, the Internet of Things, are they not really part of the problem we face? Are they not contributing to the problem of the health challenges of the global problem? Thank you.
I'll attempt to very, very quickly touch on the issues raised. I think one of the first questions was addressing the notion of what are the challenges, what are the barriers, what's stopping us from, apart from that stopping me, yeah, what's stopping us from moving ahead in terms of sustainability? I think they are numerous. Political will. We hear some noises and some words coming from, for example, America compared to other parts of the world. There's also the issue of priorities. What's a priority in certain parts of the world may not be, and some of the governments may want to get to their priorities. There's the issue around exposure of what the actual issues are, and that's why I think improved awareness, education and training, and also the issue of there are people who don't believe that what they do impact on the world. So there are different layers of barriers, and we all need to be working together. There was a question around researchers coming together to collaborate, and the notion of risks. We need to collaborate. One of the questions I had wanted to ask one of the presenters was the extent to which perhaps funding is put into research for real big collaborative research across nations in tackling some of the very, very difficult aspects of sustainability. So there's room for collaboration. And you've just heard one that is taking place between ASU and London South Bank University. The last question was around, indeed, is technology advancement not part of the problem? If you look at some of the characteristics of wicked problems, it seems that one of the things we put forward as part of taking this issue forward has consequences we may not even think about. And that's why we need to manage these technologies very, very carefully. And there's no part that we all suffer around how we mismanage technology than the notion of security. Are you with me? So yes, it's not so much that it's the bad thing, it's how we put checks and balances to make sure they work well for us. There are also many instances where technology has seen right improvement, especially in Africa and Asia, especially smartphones where people now can get in touch. It's reduced lots of shall I say, accidents on roads. Instead of traveling, which people do over a long distance, they can now stay in their local villages to phone people. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Professor Charles. Thank you to Dr. Farzana and Professor Charles. They were really very useful presentations and keynote speeches, and we learned a lot from them. I'm going to produce a report at the end of this conference, and we can circulate it to everybody. Now, there's one announcement from Dr. Fraser.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation, Dr. Farzana and Dr. Charles. Just I want to talk about some logistics. Please note that in the program we have 3 sessions happening in parallel. So session 1 will be in conference room 1, which is just next door. And then for session 2 and session 3, they will be in a conference just across the lift. The first one is 2 and the second one is 3rd. So every single presentation will be for 10 minutes, followed by 5 minutes questions. So in the rooms there are tea and coffee, and we see you, all of you there. So if you need any question, any clarification, please ask any member of the staff. Thank you so much.